The 2020 NBA draft wasn't great. There's a lot of drafts where Anthony Edwards would be a top 5 pick, but there's not many where he goes number 1. Becoming the top pick comes with really high expectations. Expectations that for Edwards might not have been warranted. I think we tend to forget who these players were as prospects leading up to the draft. What made everyone excited about Edwards was his long NBA-ready frame, elite explosiveness, and the skills he possessed with the ball in his hands that made his upside hard to pass on. It wasn't the production. He went to Georgia for his freshman year, where he averaged 19 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists, but shot just 40% from the field and 29% from 3. We really shouldn't have even been expecting league average efficiency from Edwards at the start of his career, but that's not what happened. Most everyone had high expectations. So when he was averaging 12 points, shooting 34% from the field and 27% from 3 in the first 16 games of the year, we already saw people raising a ton of concerns. But since then, in his last 8 games, he's averaged 18 points, shooting 44% from the field and 42% from 3 on over 6 attempts a game. This is amazing to see. He's clearly getting more and more confident as every game goes by. He was put in a tough spot. He gets drafted to a team that sucks as it is, but is also without their best player. I'm interested to see how he and this team plays when Cat returns, but I really think Edwards is going to have a really strong rest of season. A player that makes me sad to see not reaching expectations is Cam Reddish. I love Cam Reddish going into the draft. Yeah, his college production, it wasn't great, but you don't see many prospects that are a 6'8" wing with a 7-foot wingspan that comfortable with the ball in the perimeter. I really thought based on the player I saw in high school that his time at Duke really wasn't telling, and he was actually going to have a really strong rookie season. To start things off, it wasn't great. He really didn't look good. As the season went on, he would have some spurts though where he looked like the real deal, which continued to raise my confidence. So much so that I'm sitting on way too many PSA 10 Prism rookies of his. I thought this was going to be the season. I thought we were going to see DeAndre Hunter have small growth as mainly just a 3-and-D wing, and it was going to be Reddish that looked like the future second or third option for this roster. But it's actually been Hunter that's breaking out, while Reddish is showing little to no improvement. In his first 11 games of the season, he was averaging 12 points, shooting 38% from the field. I was really hoping that was just a slump to start the season, but it hasn't gotten better. In the last 8 games, he's shooting just 35% from the field and 16% from 3. I really hope he turns this around. The role is there for him. He really needs to pick it up before it's gone. Kendrick Nunn is a player that I had as an early season disappointment, and for good reason. We all saw his incredible start to his career, but as last season went on, he started to go downhill all the way to the point where he lost his starting spot and didn't have much of a role when the Heat went to the finals. To start this season, it didn't look like he was going to be given a second chance. He was averaging just 5 points, shooting 40% from the field and 18% from 3. At that point, I didn't think we'd be talking about Nunn for too much longer, but in his last 9 games, he's now averaging 18 points, shooting 51% from the field and 37% from 3. The Heat have probably been the most disappointing team this season, and it's looking like they're going to be very active at the deadline in order to try and get things back on track. I'm interested to see if Nunn will be involved in any of these deals. Marvin Bagley has been confusing so far. He came out of high school as the top-ranked recruit and then went to Duke where he didn't disappoint. He ended up becoming the 2nd overall pick in the 2018 draft. The next 3 picks were Luka Doncic, Trae Young, and Jaren Jackson Jr. As a rookie, he was solid. He averaged 15 points and 8 rebounds, which is a great start to your career. In his second season, he was flooded by injury. He'd played just 13 games, where his production was very similar. But now this season, it was really supposed to be the year where we could get a solid outlook on his future. In the first 14 games, he averaged 14 points and 8 rebounds, shooting 47% from the field. Since then, he's gone down to 10 points and 7 rebounds on similar efficiency. Obviously not terrible, but we're not talking about a second-round pick. We're talking about a guy that the Sacramento Kings decided to take over Luka Doncic. We're still seeing him deal with some minor injuries. Maybe that's what's going to end up stopping him from reaching his potential, but 3 years in, and we're not seeing a much different player than we saw in his very first game. I'm holding on to hope, but I'm getting concerned as his production continues to go down as the season goes on. Next up, we've got RJ Barrett, the 3rd overall pick from a season ago that I just don't see anyone talking about. In fact, I've barely heard anyone talk about last year's rookie class. It's kind of wild to me how fast the hype can die down. But RJ Barrett is having such an interesting season. He started it off as good as you can, putting up 26 points, 8 rebounds and 5 assists on 11 for 15 from the field and 3 for 3 from 3. This got everyone excited. Excitement that would go away very fast, as in the next 10 games, he would shoot just 33% from the field and 13% from 3. But luckily for Knicks fans, he turned it around. In the next 13 games, he would average 19 points, shooting 51% from the field, 43% from 3, and 80% from the line. I really like RJ Barrett as a player. Every time I get to watch him play, I'm reminded of how high his potential really is. I really think the rest of the season is going to look a lot more like the last 13 games, opposed to how he started off the year. Now we've got his teammate Obi Toppin, who's in a much different spot. Toppin looked great in the preseason, and because he was projected to have such a big role, he actually went into the season with top 3 odds to win Rookie of the Year. It's kind of crazy looking back. In the first game, he would shoot 3 for 12 from the field and suffered an injury, causing him to miss the next chunk of games. But since his return, we've seen his role get smaller and smaller. He's averaged 5 points a game, shooting 43% from the field and 28% from 3. Now, I'm a big believer in Toppin. In fact, I thought he was one of the most underrated prospects leading up to the draft, but with this downward trajectory of his rookie season, I have to include him in this video. Malik Monk is a funny one. I hadn't talked about him in a very long time, but then I make a video about players that won't reach their potential, and of course, he decides to catch fire. Since being drafted in 2017, he's been a hard player to keep on the court with his combination of defense and inefficient offense. He didn't play many games at the start of the season. When we saw him, it wasn't great, but in the last 6 games, we've seen a whole new player. He's proven himself worthy of his biggest role to date, where he's averaged 16 points, shooting 47% from the field and 49% from 3. Now, these averages are greatly helped by his 36-point performance, where he hit 9 threes, but nonetheless, Monk has a lot of people excited right now. The Hornets have been must-see TV lately, with all the crazy storylines they have going on. One of those being Malik Monk. I'm really curious to see what kind of contract or even what happens to him following this season, as he's going to be a restricted free agent. Next, we've got Sekou Doumbouya, the Pistons' first-round pick from last season. He came into the league as the youngest player, and while his rookie season as a whole didn't look great, averaging 6 points, shooting 39% from the field, he had a couple really good games that had me excited about his future. The Pistons decided to add to their front court in free agency, and they were getting Blake Griffin back, so I didn't expect a big jump in his role, but it's actually been significantly reduced. When on the court, it hasn't been great either. He's averaged 4 points and 2 rebounds, shooting below 30% from the field. He's still very young, but it's not looking great. They decided to let go of Christian Wood, and obviously they got Jeremy Grant, who's been amazing, but I was really hoping they would start really committing to a rebuild with the departure of both Reggie Jackson and Andre Drummond. Cole Anthony has been such an interesting player to follow. In high school, he was the top point guard in the country. He went into his freshman season at North Carolina, projected to be a lock for a top 5 selection, but really slipped as the season went on. The Magic ended up getting him with the 15th pick in the recent draft. There was a lot of people that looked at this pick as a reach, but I loved it. The Orlando Magic have to shoot for the moon when it comes to the NBA draft, and for the most part, they've done that, going after guys like Jonathan Isaac and Mo Bamba, and then taking a chance on a guy like Markelle Fultz via a trade. A move that looks like it's gonna pay off. So them using their first rounder on a boom or bust guy like Cole Anthony was a perfect decision in my opinion. He looked really good in the preseason, but once the year actually started, he struggled. In the first 14 games, he would average 10 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists, shooting 32% from the field and 22% from 3. Obviously not great, but since then, he's now the starting point guard following the injury of Markelle Fultz, and he's averaging 13 points, 5 assists, and 5 rebounds, shooting 46% from the field and 50% from 3. He's really growing as a player as the season goes on. If only this team can just escape the injuries from their young players, it feels like we're never seeing this Magic team in its entirety. Now, the next two I wasn't sure if I wanted to include, as even at the start of the season, they were playing good, but I felt their improvements were worth mentioning. After De'Aaron Fox took a huge jump in his second season, it really looked like he was on pace to be one of the league's top point guards very quickly. But this past season, he didn't take another jump like we thought he would. To start this year, again, it didn't look like that jump was coming. In the first 8 games, he averaged 18 points and 6 assists, shooting 43% from the field and 30% from 3. But since then, Fox has looked like an all-star, averaging 25 points and 7 assists, shooting 50% from the field and 38% from 3. His averages have been going up basically every game, as he's consistently cracking 30 points a night. Fox is such a fun player to watch, so I'm really hoping his success continues. I also thought I would mention Luka Doncic. We know how good he is, but there were some concerns at the start of the season due to his shooting, which was just flat out bad. In the first 8 games, he was shooting 23%, which is disappointing from a guy that came into the year as the odds-on favorite to take home MVP. Now since then, in the last 15 games, he's gotten it up to around league average, shooting 36% on 7 attempts. His shooting has always frustrated me. He's amazing at so many aspects of the game, but shooting hasn't been one of them, and it doesn't make sense. His shot looks good, and he has such a great ability to create his own space. They just haven't gone in consistently. It's great to see him getting closer to what we want to see in that department, but just imagine a 40% from 3 Luka Doncic.